Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we are going to discuss about the difference between where and having clause. So in the last session, we have discussed about the having clause and we have seen some example as well. Where clause we already discussed in some of the initial videos. So let's see what exactly the difference between where and having clause and when we use the where clause and when we use the having clause. So we have seen some of the example in the last video as well. So before you start this video, you should have the knowledge about the aggregate function and the group by clause and the having clause that we have discussed in the previous video. If you are not aware about that, I will suggest you to watch that videos first and then start with this video. I'm providing the link here in the description as well. So let's discuss the theoretical explanation first. What exactly the difference between the where and the having clause? So when we use the where clause, so basically when you want to filtering the data, in both the cases we are using the where and the having clause. But where clause we use before putting any grouping or the aggregation function. In that case, we will use the where clause. And when you put the aggregation and groups, in that case, after that you can use the having clause. So before putting any grouping or aggregation, we use where. After putting any grouping or aggregation, we use the having clause. And where clause we can use with any SQL query. So for the filtering data, suppose I have filtered the data and I want the cell amount should be greater than 2000. So I can write the simplex select query and I can write the where clause where I want the total cell amount should be greater than 2000. So with any SQL query, I can use the where clause. But having clause you can use typically with the group by only. So when I'm using any aggregate function and group by to grouping the data to analyzing of the data, in that case I can use the having clause. So basically where clause is used with the individual rows or the individual data, and the having clause we are using with the aggregate or the group data. So in the where clause, we are not using any aggregate function. So we are already discussed about the aggregate function like sum, count, average, max, minimum. We have already discussed this aggregate function in detail. But in where clause, we have not using any aggregate function, but in the having clause, we are using the aggregate function. So as we are discussed, suppose I want to find out the total cell amount should be greater than 2000, then I need to put that aggregate function in the filtering condition. So basically, in the simple level, if you want to understand, both where and having clause are we are using for the filtering purpose. But the where clause we are using before putting any grouping or the aggregation, and the having clause we are putting after using any grouping and the aggregation. So that's basically the simple difference between the where clause and the having clause. So let's see how we can perform this operation. So for that, I'm going to use the same table that we have used in the previous video as well. That is the sales table. And these are the some of the example we have seen in the last video for the having clause. So let's create the new query here. And I'm going to write a simple select query like select star from dbo.sales. So let's see what exactly the data available in the sales table. So you can see there are different columns are available like cell ID, employee name, department, cell amount and the cell date, and we will see some of the example using this data. So there are total 5 rows. So let's perform where operation first. So where operation we perform before putting any aggregate function. Let's perform the where operation. So suppose I want to find out the total cell per department, but consider only rows where the cell amount is greater than 1000. Okay, so I just want to perform the total cell operation where the cell amount is greater than 1000. So for that, how we can write the query? So this is the example one where we are using the where clause. Okay. So example is find out total sales per department, but only consider rows where sale amount is greater than 1000. So if you see the data, there are total two record where the sale amount is greater than 1000. The one is 1200 and the other one is 1500. So let's write the query for this one. So first I will write a simple select query, select star from dbo.sales. So if you find out here we want total sale per department. So basically what we are doing here, so we are putting the where condition before performing any grouping operation, right? So whatever the sale amount we are using for the calculation or the aggregate function, that we are taking after the filtering. So basically we want the sale amount should be greater than 1000. So first we will put the where condition and then we will perform the grouping. So let's see how we can do that. So for that, I just write a simple select query. So in this select query, what exactly the column name I want? So I want the department and the cell amount. And the cell amount, we want the total cell. So we are going to perform the aggregate function. So let's write that query first. I want department and the second one is the total cell amount. That means sum of the cell amount, and we can give the alias name as the total sale. So this is the simple query that we have discussed in the previous video as well. And after that we used to put the group by clause. But here before putting the group by clause, we need to add the where clause. So basically what exactly the cell amount we are considering, where the cell amount should be greater than 1000. So for putting this filter, we need to use this where clause. So how we can write the query? So after writing from dbo.sell, you can write the where condition. So where sale amount should be greater than 1000. So basically we are filtering the data where the sale amount is greater than 1000. Do the addition of those sale amount only. Now if we execute this query, we will get the error as the department we have not put any aggregate function for the department. So we will get the error as we discussed in the previous videos as well. So for that what we need to do, we need to put the department in the group by clause. So that I will write group by department. So basically here in this condition, we are putting the where clause before putting the group by. So if you want to put the filtering after grouping, then you need to use the having clause, right? So let's execute this query. So now you can see we are just getting the electronics. So if I compare this with the original data, you will get what exactly the output and how we getting this output. So if you see the cell amount greater than 1000, there are total two cell amount. So one is the cell made by Alice for the department electronics, and the cell amount is the 1200, and the other record is again the sale made by Alice for the department electronics, and the amount is 1500. So basically what we are doing, we want the sale amount greater than 1000. So there are just two records where the sale amount is greater than 1000. So what exactly the total sale amount then? So 1200 plus 1500, that is the 2700, and we are grouping it by department. So that's why you can see the column name department here. So first it filters only rows where the sale amount is greater than 1000. Then it groups by department and calculates the total. And that's why we are getting the output as the department name is the electronics and the total sale is 2700. So in the last video, we already discussed about the having clause. So let's see example once again. So it will be easy you to find out what exactly the difference between the where clause and the having clause. So the example 2 is, suppose I want to show the department where the total sale is greater than 2000 regardless of the individual sale amount. So I will consider all the sale amount, and at the end I want to show the department where the total sale is greater than 2000. So basically I want to find out total sale greater than 2000. So basically we want to find out total sale per department greater than 2000. So how to find out that? So let's see. First I'm going to write a simple select query, select star from dbo.sales. So here we want the department as well as the total sale. So first thing I will write is the department, and to find out the total sale you can write, use the aggregate function name as the sum, and the column name we need to put as the sale amount. Let's give the alias name as the total sale. Okay. Now here we are not putting any filter on the this data. We are putting the filter after grouping the data. So that's why we don't need to use any where clause here. So directly I will put the group by clause here. So group by department. Okay. So basically in the above query we have put the where clause. We are not using any where clause here as we want all the cell amount. Okay. So let's execute this query first. So you can see we are getting the two records here, and the total sale amount is a 3700 and the 1500. Now I want to put the filter on this data. Now this data where aggregate function is already performed and the grouping is already performed, and now I want to use the filtering option. In that case we cannot use the where clause, so we need to use the having clause only. So let's write having. So here we need to find out the total sale. So let's just copy sum of sale amount should be greater than 2000. So output we are expecting is just the electronics department where the total sale is the 3700. Let's see what exactly the output we are getting. So you can see we are getting the expected output. So here what exactly happening? So it is first grouping all the rows by department, then it is calculating total sales for each group. So there was two groups, electronics and furniture. So it calculated the total sale per group. After calculating the total sale per group, only group with total sale greater than 2000 are written. As we have performed the filtering operation here, that means we have used the having clause here. So where condition we are using before we are putting any aggregate function and doing grouping, and the having clause we are using after performing the grouping and the aggregation function. So this is the basic difference between the where clause and the having clause. So filters, if you want to perform before the aggregation, use the where clause. If you want to perform after the aggregation, use the having clause. Where clause, we are not using any aggregate function like sum, average, but with the having clause, we are using the aggregate function like sum, average, count. And the common use where clause we are using before group by, and having clause we are using after the group by. So let's see one example where we are using both the where and the having clause. So suppose I'm taking the example 3. Suppose I want to find out employee who made more than one sale but only consider the sale above 800. So let's see the data again. So if you see the Alice and Bob who made the more than one sale, and the sale amount we need to consider it should be greater than 800. So let's see how to write this query. So the first thing is I will write the select query, simple select query, select star from dbo.sales. Let me write the statement as well. Find employees who made more than one sale but only consider sale above 800. But only consider sale above, but only consider sale above 800. So we have written just basic select star from TPO cell query. So first thing is we want the employee name. So I'm writing here the column name as the employee name. The second thing is we want is the count of the employees who made more than one cell. So when you want to find out the number of rows, in that case you can use the count star. So this we already discussed in the aggregate function. So count star is basically used to find out the number of rows. So this is the number of cells performed by each employee. So there are two employees who perform more than one cell, right? So we have put this filter, and whatever those employ, we want the sale amount should be greater than 800 only. So here we can write the filtering condition. So for that, this 800 sale amount we are putting before we are performing any grouping and aggregation. So that's why we are using the where condition, where sale amount is greater than 800. And then after putting where condition, we need to write the group by clause. Group by, so one column name where we have not put any aggregate function, that will come in the group by clause, that is the employee name. And after writing the employee name in the group by clause, we need to use the having clause as we want the employees who made more than one cell. So having, so employee, how we can find out the number of cells is using count star. Just copy paste this, and number of cells should be greater than one. So let's execute this. Let's see what exactly the output we are getting. Then I will explain you again. So we are getting the output as the ls, where the number of cells is the 2. You can cross verify with the original data as well. So I'm writing just simple select query so we can cross verify. So the first thing we want is the employee name and the number of cells performed by each employee, right? So we have written a simple select query where we have mentioned the column name, employee name, and to find out the number of cells per employee, we need to count the number of rows per employee after performing grouping. So that's why we are using the count star. So before performing any aggregate function and grouping, we need to put the filtering operation, that is cell amount should be greater than 800. So consider those employee who have performed the sale amount greater than 800. So if you consider that Alice performed greater than 800 cell and the Carol performed greater than 800 cell. So the output we are expecting after putting just where clause is the Alice and the Carol, right? Who have performed the cell amount greater than 800. After this, that we have performed the grouping operation. So when you perform the grouping operation, what exactly the output we are expecting? So there should be two output like Alice, Carol, and the number of cells, like for Alice it is 2 and for Carol it is only 1. So we have put the grouping operation. So first, it is perform where operation. After where operation, we have performed the grouping operation. After grouping, we have performed the having operation, that is again filtering operation on all the output. So after the grouping operation, we have got the two output, Alice and the Carol, and the number of cells performed by Alice is 2 and the Carol perform only one cell. So when you put this having filtering operation, where number of cells we want more than one, so that's why Carol is get filtered out, and we got the output as the just Alice and the number of cells too. So basically where operation is performing first. After where, when we filter out the rows, we are performing the grouping operation and the aggregate operation. So basically, where clause we are performing before putting any grouping and aggregate operation, and having clause we are performing after putting grouping and aggregate operation. So from this example, you will get clear idea when to use where and when to use the having clause. So that's it for the today, guys. If you have any question related to the where clause and the having clause, you can put down that in the comment section. I will try to respond them as soon as possible. If this video is useful for you, please like, share and subscribe to my channel. And thank you for watching this video till the end. Have a nice day.